Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Arts House in North Melbourne Town Hall and a forum of truly transnational ideas. I'm Michael Sheriffs from Radio National's Creative Instinct program. The title of tonight's discussion is Asia and Europe equals Australia. A nice little concept that we should pretty much have sorted out by the end of the evening. Along with a scarily well-appointed audience of people who work very closely with the idea of how these three regions connect, I'm joined on stage by four people who work at some of this topic's junction points. We have two guests from Canberra, His Excellency Mr. David Daly there, the EU Ambassador and Head of the European Delegation to Australia and New Zealand. On the end, His Excellency Mr. Patrick Renaud, Belgian Ambassador to Australia and New Zealand. And from Melbourne, the equally marvellous Leslie Allway, the Arts Director for Asia Link. And next to me, the cause of all this kerfuffle, David Pledger, who's the driving force behind Not Yet It's Difficult, the interdisciplinary arts group that's organising this event. We'll briefly hear from all four speakers, then we'll embark on a discussion and audience questions if the time allows. I'm sure there'll be time. We'll start first with David Pledger. While having a very strong background in Asia, in artistic collaborations in the region, David and I first met when he was working in Brussels on behalf of the Australia Council. And it sort of started quite a long conversation from there. So anyway, David, thanks, Mike. Please open.
Firstly, I'd like to begin by acknowledging with respect the customs and traditions of Indigenous Australians and their special relationship with the land. The artists, companies and presenters of this event respectfully acknowledge that this program takes place at Arts House in North Melbourne on the land of the traditional owners of the Kulin Nation. I also wish to extend a warm welcome and thanks to our invited speakers, Ambassador David Daly, Ambassador Patrick Renaud and the lovely Leslie Allway from Asia Link. Thank you, Leslie. I'd also like to welcome our invited guests in the audience and the ladies and gentlemen of Melbourne and some far-flung cities of Australia who have made their way here this evening for the third event of Not Yet It's Difficult's ASEM et al. Program, a program which locates artistic practice at the centre of a broader cultural conversation. ASEM, which is our artistic project, brings together artists from Asia, Europe and Australia across the performing arts disciplines of theatre, dance and music. Ampersand is the symbol for the linking word and in our artistic endeavour it relates to the interconnectedness between theatre and dance and music. In fact, what we seem to be doing is developing a training protocol for the performing arts that connects the dots between the essential liveness within each discipline, thereby providing a platform for genuine cross-disciplinary exploration. This interconnectedness is at the foundation of Not Yet It's Difficult to Practice, our project, and this forum. Interconnectedness is a way of seeing in the world of the 21st century. At its heart, Ampersand endeavours to create a new shared language around the proposition, how do we sense what we can neither see nor hear? And as we've set about trying to answer this question in the studio, we've been sending information physically and musically, receiving it and processing it, and coming up with the objective of coming up with a more refined version of the question, a process rather like the one I hope we conduct this evening. It also strikes me that trying to sense what we can neither see nor hear is a rather useful metaphor for policy development, which is essentially about developing frameworks for things that might occur. And as such, policy development is just as much about soothsaying as it is intelligence gathering, and so shares much in common with art making. Around the artistic project Ampersand are the other things, the et al. In the title, that it has inspired. These are a series of related events aimed at uncovering aspects of our artistic and cultural practices which are not immediately evident to us. So So far, we've run a professional training workshop for artists, a seminar on the cultural phenomenon, the Korean Wave, and as of Friday night, we'll be presenting a kind of performance of the development work which we've undertaken over the previous 2 weeks, to which you're all warmly invited. Now, the interest that the Ampersand et al. Program has generated suggests that there is a kind of hunger for this transversal thinking, which places artistic practice at the centre of cultural discourse. And we offer it up as a new model for international artistic collaboration, and the values of which, we hope, will be reflected in the eagerly awaited National Cultural Policy, which is one of the contexts for this evening's discussion. Now, for artists, the policy will have lasting value only if it creates an environment in which they are central to cultural production and discourse. It's a view reflected, I think, in the current platform papers finding a place on the Asian stage by Carrillo Gantner and Alison Carroll, the latter of whom I'm happy to say is in the audience this evening, and also by Rupert Meyer in the March edition of Art Monthly, who argues for the centrality of the artist in cultural policy. Now, what is consistent in both of these papers is a view of the artist as both a creator and a receiver of culture and art. Artists are essentially adventurers, farmers of the imagination, antenna for new ideas, and processors of possibility. They can make things out of nothing at all. Give them financial support and a central place in an undertaking, and they will turn their power of alchemy to make things that are extraordinary. And so if you're reading what I say as a positioning strategy for our discussion tonight, then it means I've been transparent. Whatever cultural policy incursions are undertaken in the international realm, I believe, need to be conceived with the artist as the primary agent. This way is cost-efficient, future-focused, and culturally progressive. My provocation for this evening's equation, Asia plus Europe equals Australia, is this: that Australia's success in the 21st century hinges on its capacity to develop multilateral strategies in the area of international policy, and specifically in the cultural domain, the cultivation of Australia as a two-way portal between Asia and Europe. In this paradigm, Australia, with its geographical location in Asia and its cultural empathy with Europe, is something of an island hybrid in the Asia-Europe dynamic. As such, its cultural position is unique and full of potential to be realised in the intercultural, international and regional equation. Now, this view has been percolating in my mind for some years and coalesced in my time in Brussels, where I recently established the collaboration project between the EU-funded International Network for Contemporary Performing Arts, the IETM, and the Australia Council for the Arts. And in numerous instances, when I engaged cultural operators on the matter of European engagement with Asia, the talk quickly turned to how pivotal a role Australia could and should play in the dialogue. Now, there are a number of current contextual events which are worthy of note and may arise in this evening's discussion. I'd just like to list a few of them. They include the nomination of Australia as a third-party country in 2013 by the European Commission for Cultural Projects, the proposed 37% increase by the European Commission for its 2014-2020 culture budget under the banner Creative Europe, and I think that's going to be discussed in a few days' time with the EU ministers in Brussels. The inclusion of Australia in 2010 in the Asia+Europe meeting, ASEM, and the current Australia in the Asian Century white paper. So some of these might come up tonight in our discussion, and hopefully some of you might be able to speak to them, as well as our guests. Before I hand over to Michael, I'd just like to make an apology for the absence of any Asian representation on the panel. When the forum was originally conceived, it was done so in mind with the participation of Claire Song, the producer of Uturi, our Korean partner, and for various reasons we actually weren't able to make her presence here a reality. However, I hope in the meantime that you enjoy the evening's discussion, and I look forward to it as well.